Hi, I'm Shane Liyanage, and I'm doing question and answers for the tennis nerds.
Hello, on today's episode, we have Shane Liyanage talking about his career and how he got into tennis analytics. Shane is part of the Arena Zabalenka team that won the Australian Open, and he is also someone that has contributed to the tennis nerds before. So, Shane, let me ask you how you got into tennis analytics.
Yeah, getting into tennis analytics was maybe not something on any roadmap or plan that I had, um, but I wouldn't say I fell into it. I did pursue it, but it was a culmination of a lot of things. I think I grew up loving tennis. Wasn't a great player. Certainly couldn't coach or anything like that. But I felt I had an eye for the game in perhaps a unique way. But yeah, look, I went through uni, did a commerce law degree with a lot of, I guess, stats and number related sort of units as part of the commerce side in particular. I actually, uh, yeah, after finishing the commerce requirements, doing sort of my the majors for that, I actually took a year off before completing my legal side. So in that year off, I actually worked full time for a company called Holiday Concepts, and that was probably my first taste in the data and analytics space. The role was a bit more. It was a balance between that and sort of the financial side, so making sure reconciliations were done, were balancing on the financial side, but it also looked at doing some analysis, some modeling to try and target particular groups. The industry was the timeshare, or sort of the market, or what they were working in was sort of timeshare company. So yeah, it was really to try and use data that we had to try and target more consumers, and yeah, various little analysis related to that. So that was probably my first dive. That was 2007. But yeah, at this stage, I was still thinking I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to go down that path. And this was just a year off where I worked, got some money, did some travel. But yeah, that was the first sort of taste in that data space. I would say my data skills at that stage weren't amazing. I was naturally good with computers and Excel and new formulas and new macros and things like that. But I wouldn't say I was unbelievable in that space. But yeah, did some basic modeling, linear regression and decision tree modeling and things like that. So I knew the basics. I knew how to use it to apply it to I guess real world scenarios. So and yeah, the maths background. Both my parents are engineers, so going through school, the math side was pretty strong generally for me. As a result, so all that side, doing that sort of work came a little bit more naturally, I would say, than the legal side, where I had to really work hard to get through. Whereas on the numbers side, commerce and the accounting, it came a bit more naturally. But yeah, so I kind of put a pause to it for that year, and then went back and finished my legal degree. And I think in my mind, I was going to be a lawyer at that stage. I worked, along the way, I worked as a paralegal at Norton Rose, a big law firm. Then transitioned into Strong Law, and that's it was a family law firm. And I guess I was doing paralegal work, and at that stage I probably questioned whether I wanted to do it full time. I applied for a grad role at the Department of Finance in Canberra. And this was around the end of 2010. So 2011, I was successful. Got into the grad program at Department of Finance, and was in sort of an analyst role there in the finance space. And yeah, again, I would say the role was probably more on the financial management side, but there were elements of sort of data analysis, and sort of the skills grew. You learn from a lot of great people who had great data skills, and you pick up a few things. You do some courses. The program was amazing. You could select areas to develop. So sort of got myself a little bit more into that. I think I did a Visual Basic programming subject, got me better with macros, and slowly you start building your skill set. I think I did an SQL course. So you're starting to sort of build your toolkit in the analysis space, and yeah, did that for a couple of years, and was in government for a while. Got a lot of experience in a lot of different teams, which is really good. Along the way, I was probably doing a little bit of legal work and a little bit of analysis work. And I hadn't decided at that stage, and I was going through doing my articles, or I think it's the experience hours that you're required to do to get admitted as a lawyer. So I was doing that. Had some amazing mentors there, and the mentors were so good it actually confused me whether I wanted to be a lawyer or go down the analysis path, because I really admired them. So I really wanted to stick it out and try and be a lawyer, because I just saw the way they operated and the difference they were making. So I probably delayed my decision to go into the analytics world a little bit, but kept doing it. And I'd say in all the roles, there was a data element, analysis element, which I was probably one of the few in the team that would lead, and that was great for me. That I think that gave me the confidence, because people were like, okay, there's a data bit, there's a bit of a modeling required, or there's something along those lines, and I would be the go-to guy in the team. So I kind of got that hat, and then along the way I'd moved from Commonwealth government into state government, into various roles where I was thrust on doing building dashboards. Still, again, the role wouldn't be I would say 100% an analytics role, as in an IT sort of analytics role, but it again, I think over time more of my job description or job requirements became in that sort of space where taking data, doing some analysis, building sort of views, and working with subject matter experts to make decisions. And also was sort of transitioned from finance sector to health, to mining for a bit. I went back into the transport finance side, so working with some big sort of data sets as well, in government. And again, a lot of experience, a lot of opportunity to grow and develop. I know at the time you can be a little bit frustrated with the way things are going, but I look back fondly going, I got a lot of experiences, met a lot of really good people, learned a lot from a lot of people, and that helped me. It's just another step along that journey. And probably towards the end of my time in the public service, I started looking at sort of doing something in the sports space, and I'd started my company towards the end of that, and helping some local coaches that they were going to tournaments, and just trying to collect data from those events and help them go back to their players and have some meaningful sort of data and analysis and feedback that they can give, and they were taking 20 odd kids there, so they couldn't really focus on all of them, so this helped them to, I guess, see what happened at the event, and also help them communicate back to their parents. So that was a bit of a taste into the analytics world in tennis, and at the same time I realized I needed some more credibility, and on a number of fronts. So I applied for a role at Cricket Australia. Same time I had completed a executive data science specialisation, and along the way at cricket as well, I decided I needed to get a Masters of Sports Analytics from La Trobe, which is I'd say a hybrid between a sports science, probably a little bit more leaning towards a sports data science course. So some really great units. Got to learn a lot, I think, in the data space doing that. Exposed to programming languages like R and Python, and along the way, just met a lot of amazing analysts. Part of the program shared with the computer science faculty. So just really in some of the units like deep learning and even the SQL unit, just really got to learn from some amazing people, structuring their coding really well, and going about just writing efficient code, and that was something that I learnt a lot doing that master's program. So I can't really thank the program enough. So Dave Carey, I will give him a shout out. He led that sort of program. Min as well in the program, and yeah, those guys really challenged me to think a little bit out of my comfort zone and learn some new tools and apply some statistical sort of concepts to make my analysis better. So I gained a lot from that. At the same time, I got that role at Cricket Australia. So went through that, learned a lot in that role. And I think it got me a little bit of credibility working with a bigger sporting organisation. I sort of took the lead in my department there in community cricket in the data space. So that sort of experience sort of being the go-to guide negotiating your department's position on certain data matters with the IT guys. Again, another sort of a skill that I acquired, and I think that's again during that period I got to do a number of different courses and gain a lot of skills. Learned some new tool, Power BI, different Azure machine learning studio. So some pretty cool tools that I think shaped my understanding of the analytics space even more. And then COVID sort of hit, and I had a small team at the time that worked for me, and I had to let them go. And I guess when I came back, so cricket had a bit of a shutdown in terms of for the period of COVID. People either worked part time or they didn't have a role until a specified period. During that time, I actually went back into government and worked in that sort of finance space again. A little bit of analytics work there, but I'd say more in the finance accounting space. But yeah, when I came back, I didn't have a team, and I guess it got me thinking. At that point, I felt it was right to make a move on the DDSA front, stop it being a sort of a part-time business and really go all in. It was a tough decision, one which I've got to always thank my wife, who supported me and backed me, because even in 2017 when I had the idea of sort of DDSA or data-driven sports analytics, I had a stable job, good salary, career progression was going well. I felt I had a good reputation in those roles, and to sort of try and move away and go into a completely a different field, and I wouldn't even say it was a sideways step, it was probably a backward step going to Cricket Australia. So so it was, she sort of supported that decision and backed me again when I wanted to go all in with DSA, where the first year was always going to be tough, building of all the expenses, getting the infrastructure, the computing power required to do the work we do, and get contractors to do certain bits of work. It was always going to be a tough first year, so she understood that and backed it, and thankfully, it sort of worked out. I was very lucky at the time. I had been sort of doing some work for Isam Jalali. I was Ons Jabber's coach, and he just committed to me for the next 12 months, and just gave me the confidence that I could land some of these players, and she'd gone from I think 77 or 80 in the world to 31 at that point. So I felt like what I was doing was worthwhile and could make a difference, and I felt I had the respect and trust of some great coaches. So I went sort of all in, and at the time, towards the end of that year, started with Arina Zabalenka, Emil Ruzavuri, so starting into the 2020 year, 2021 year, I felt, I was attracting some interest, and then it sort of, that's sort of how, long story, but that's sort of how it landed into tennis analytics, and I guess we're continuing to evolve. The space is changing significantly, so I think at DDSA we're evolving. I'd like to think as a person in this space I'm evolving as well.
So, Shane, what do you think are the biggest challenges for tennis now going forward into the future?
Yeah, I think the space is changing significantly. So traditionally, there's been a lot of reliance on manual tagging. So that's where someone will go in with a bit of video, or maybe they're live on court, and they'll just track and chart each point. So it might be as simple as going serve, in play, forehand, mistake. So it could be something simple as that, or it could be far more laborious, where you've got serve, plot where it bounces, plot where it cleared the net, where the opponent makes contact with it, then you've got the outcome. So it was a forehand, it was inside out, it landed here. And you can have some qualitative things that you jot down. So it could be quite a laborious process, that manual tagging. But at the end of it, you get a decent data set, and then your analysts of the world can, or your data scientists of the world can actually go in and do some great analysis on it. But I think that's slowly changing. So you've got a lot of automated ball tracking and AI solutions that are hitting the market. At DSA, we've got, I would say, a semi-automatic version of it, where it tracks it to a certain level of quality, and then if the AI thinks it's not at an acceptable rate, then you've got to jump in and do some manual tagging. So we actually use a couple of manual tagging tools at Dartfish and Sissa, and then we've got that AI tracker. And with certain levels of clients and academies, we rely on a great system called Swing Vision as well. So that you can set up your iPads or iPhones, and the session can be tracked, and you get some decent stats. So some of the academies use that, and then for our top end players, we'll rely on the Hawkeye sort of data sets, and basically that's the space. But I think that's changing slowly, and you are going to see more optical tracking systems, or single camera tracking systems that can load vision in and give you a bigger data set that's accurate and reliable, or to an acceptable level for the work that the data scientists and the analysts do. So I think that'll be a massive change that'll happen in the next 2-3 years. I think the VR space is interesting, and I've started talking to a few companies about using it as a strategy tool, where we're loading patterns in, and you might face opponent A on a weekend, in a couple of days' time, and you've got it could be the courts don't have roofs and showering. You could have put on the VR goggles and kind of understand the patterns they're playing, without even having to hit a ball. You could simulate, if you went a particular strategy, what would happen. So this is, diving into the space of reinforced learning or reinforced deep learning. So there's some really cool applications that I think will happen in the next 5-6 years.
Do you think the game is changed, and what do you think is going to be the technique and the attributes of the future champions?
From a technical stance, on the sense, and I'm not in the best position to answer this question. I'm not I guess I'm not a coach, certainly not a high performance coach. I'm fortunate enough to work with some amazing coaches, both on my team at DDSA, and then some others that I work with in a client or in a client sort of capacity, or just friends in general. So that the technique side, I have picked up a little bit from them, but I'm certainly not an expert. But I would say, in my opinion, what could be a game changer is an ambidextrous player. So with the data that I've got, I always look at options that players have from different parts of the court. In most cases, the player with most options, and so when I say options, I factor in things like their execution. Are they able to execute well from there? The different shots and the directions that they have, and the ability to hurt the opponent with shots from there. So I factor all those things when I consider options. So when I say options, if a player has 4 options, they have 4 options that can do some damage against the opponent, or 4 options to mitigate the damage of the opponent. So that's the players with more options generally have better outcomes. So the ambidextrous player will just open up more options potentially, for a player. They can go Maybe in offense they can switch to a left-handed forehand, but if they're in a defensive position, they can hit a backhand from there, and vice versa on the other side. So, I think that'll be a big game changer. I think the other thing to factor in, the rules of tennis have been pretty stable for a while, but there could be some rule changes. You could have, I hate if this. I would hate if this happens, but fast four format or a reduced length, and that just takes, I guess, a certain physical element out of it, or reduces a physical element, or it may enhance how hard a player plays in the first 30 minutes, knowing that they don't have to maintain that for 4 or 5 hours. So I think that could change that, and any other rule changes, like if there's this is a crazy one. I don't think this will happen, but if you went down from 2 serves to 1 serve, again, that changes potentially the sport in a significant way. You're already seeing, I guess, the involvement of teams more with on-court coaching and the live sort of data going into the player's box. So I think that's teams are going to understand how to use that better, similar to other sports. And once that's figured out a little bit more, you're going to have more significant change in the game. So you're going to have players, I guess, maybe a bit more reliant on their team during the match, and then they're free to play a little bit freely and not have to worry too much about the strategic side in the game. I hope it doesn't go all the way. The players still need to have that sort of decision making during the match, but I think there'll be a bit more reliance on the team in matches going forward. They're probably the big changes. I think it's becoming even more global sport. I think there's definitely going to be more players coming out of Asia that are competitive, out of Africa that are more competitive, just with the programs improving significantly, great coaches going there, the access to data in those federations and countries that are playing in that space. So I think we're going to see a more global game than there's ever been in the next decade, and I'm excited for that. I love working with players from smaller countries and just seeing, I guess, the barriers they're breaking. Obviously, Ons was amazing with Tunisia, getting the opportunity to work with Isam and Karim and Ons, and seeing what she's doing, not only for Tunisia, for the whole Arab world and African continent. But yeah, players like, I'm name dropping here, but I'm getting to work with a player from Taiwan in Tung Ling Wu, Tony, his nickname. Amazing guy, amazing player, and just loving just seeing his progress as well. And coming from a smaller country, my background's, my parents are from Sri Lanka. Even I'm born in Colombo there, and I came to Australia when I was 2 years old. So I'm definitely an Aussie, but still, have a Sri Lankan heritage. So just starting to talk to some players and coaches there. Would love to try and break some boundaries there and see, if a Sri Lankan player can make their way into some bigger tournaments and create that love and passion for tennis like they do in cricket. For such a small country, they do an amazing job in cricket. It'd be great to see them sort of break that boundary in tennis as well.
Thank you very much for coming on today, Shane. We really enjoyed talking to you, and hope to see you back very, very soon.
Thanks for having me on, guys. It's been a pleasure.